We're back now with Conversation Nation. Joining us tonight, MSNBC's Krystal Ball, political science professor Jason Johnson, and trial attorney Seema Iyer. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Thanks for having us, Rev.
We start with Monica Lewinsky today. In an emotional speech, she talked about falling in love with the president and wanting to die enduring the humiliation that followed it. It's all part of a campaign she announced about ending cyberbullying.
Overnight, I went from being a completely private figure to a publicly humiliated one. I was patient zero. Around the world, this story went. A viral phenomenon that you could argue was the first moment of truly social media. I couldn't imagine ever showing my face in public again. I cringed, I yelled, I sobbed. And the mantra continued, I just want to die.
And then Lewinsky got personal about that scandal that made her a household name across the globe.
16 years ago, fresh out of college, a 22-year-old intern in the White House, and more than averagely romantic, I fell in love with my boss in a 22-year-old sort of way. It happens. But my boss was the President of the United States. That probably happens less often. Now, I deeply regret it for many reasons, not the least of which is because people were hurt, and that's never okay. But back then in 1995, we started an affair that lasted on and off for 2 years. And at that time, it was my everything.
Krystal, your reaction?
I mean, here she was 22 years old. She fell in love and she did something foolish. Who among us hasn't fallen in love and done something foolish?
With a married man.
Sure, and I'm not saying it's okay, but her life has been ruined, and that married man's life is just fine. I think it takes a lot of courage for her even now to come out, and I think a lot of women who are disproportionately attacked online, attacked in the media, will find a lot of courage from her ability to stand there in front of the stage and say, this is who I am, and I'm still here, and I'm still here to speak out.
Yeah, man, I got to tell you, I teach these kids. You know, I teach 22-year-old college students, and they fall in love with all sorts of people. And this woman suffered tremendously.
I talk to people 42 that fall in love with her.
Exactly, for all the wrong kinds of reasons. And she suffered immensely so that Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton could continue their political career. So I think she's got a really good point. I feel really sorry for her that she's had to suffer this long.
Do you have a violin in that pocket? Because I'm about to play the violin.
Her life has been ruined. She hasn't been able to get a job. She has no money.
She suffered so that their careers can
Monica
exist.
Lewinsky.
She represents the minority view here.
Thank you. She has not gotten a job because she hasn't made whatever effort to get a job.
Not true.
No, that's not true.
Not
That's
true
just
at all.
factually incorrect.
Her name has been
If you want a job, you can get a job. Where is
Unless you're Monica Lewinsky.
Unless your last name is Lewinsky or Zimmerman. Look, this woman was going to have a lot of trouble trying to get a job after what happened between her and Bill Clinton.
She has a graduate degree.
So try to get a job there.
Well, let me raise this question. She is trying to do something about cyberbullying.
Right.
She put up a Twitter account, and in less than a few hours, she already had 30,000 followers. Can't she help with cyberbullying, given who she is and how candid she
shows some authenticity and takes some personal responsibility, so people.
What do you think she's doing there?
She already said, hey, I feel bad for what I did.
She's saying she was a private figure. No, she wasn't. She was engaging.
She never said she was a private figure.
In that clip,
She was a private figure. What you do in your office is what's in your office. Texas.
And she's being judged for the entire rest of her life for what she did when she was 22 years old.
And
she has a graduate degree. She talked about in her
I'm
20
that
years
when you're,
later.
Yeah, I'm talking when you're 22 years old and there's some 50-year-old man spitting game at you. That woman had no
it's the
chance.
president.
Bill Clinton had a career of seducing and occasionally abusing women.
Let's talk about her parents. What kind of parents were they?
What do her parents have to do with this?
She was out of college.
Parents didn't tell her that it was inappropriate to get involved with a married man.
No one is
Bill
saying.
Clinton's parents didn't tell him it was inappropriate to cheat on his wife, and he still did it.
No one is saying that it was okay what she did.
She's not a victim.
She's not saying it's okay what she did. She is a victim. When 20 years later her life has been ruined, do you think that her life deserved to be ruined for something she did when
Especially when Bill and Hillary Clinton have continued to be successful by exploiting her, by turning her into this bad guy or this villain for 20 years.
To turn her life around.
I like the exchange.
That is it.
Listen to each other.
I mean, that's incredibly harsh. A young woman makes a mistake when she's 22 years old. By the way, the same mistake that Bill Clinton made, and he goes on to be perfectly successful. His life is perfectly fine, and meanwhile, she can't get a job.
Hold it. Seema, nobody talk but Seema.
Whether Bill Clinton has gone on to succeed, it's a different conversation. That is about sexism and his abilities.
That's what we're talking about.
No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about taking personal responsibility, not acting like a victim, using your education, going out and finding a job, and stop blaming the rest of your world
let me ask one
for your
final
problems.
question on this.
I can't believe that nobody sees what I'm saying.
With cyberbullying, though?
Yes, she can. She's the first cyberbullying victim out there. Everything about her, from her name to her face, it was emailed around. There were Halloween costume masks made about this woman. If there's anybody who knows about bullying, it's Monica.
Yeah, and her physical, I mean, everything about her body, about her face, about her was attacked. And whether other women have exactly the same experience or not doesn't undermine the fact that a lot of women are attacked in a similar way and can get a lot out of someone who has faced a lot for the past 20 years.
Can she at least help with cyberbullying?
I'll give her that, Rev. Maybe now this is finally her calling. And I do agree that nobody deserves to be attacked for the way they look. I'll give everybody that
But you think she should live in shame for the rest of her life?
I think
she did when she was 22 years old.
She put herself there. She put herself
and she's taking responsibility for that.
No, she is not.
Well, a lot of people in politics are having this conversation, and I mean, it's real.
Can some of them come here and join me?
If they can get a word in. Everybody stay with us. Up next, Serena Williams goes on the offense after some offensive comments directed at her. That's next.